Everybody to the select board meeting, the town of Walpole. It is February 23rd of 2021. The time being after 7 p.m. We'll begin as we always do with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
which
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I'll remind everyone on the executive order on remote participation. All members will be participating remotely during the meeting due to the unprecedented time in the history of the Commonwealth. The governor has authorized this remote participation for all public boards through the emergency declaration issued on March 12th, 2020. Therefore, as we are all very familiar, every vote will be taken by roll call. So we'll start with our first piece of business tonight under appointments, which is the recognition of Walpole resident Tyler Forgeron. Tyler, hello. I see that.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Great. So Tyler and his mother Tracy are here with us tonight, and Tyler, we're all very appreciative here at the board of everything you've been doing over the last months and longer here in Walpole. And so we wanted to have you on to say thank you, to recognize everything that you've done, to have you say a little bit about what it is that you've been doing. And, we're all on the board here are very familiar with everything that you've been doing and the good deeds and that you've been spreading across Walpole. But we want to make sure that everybody else does too, which is part of the reason why we want to bring this recognition. So if either of you could say a little something about what you've been up to and why you're here tonight, that'd be great. And then we'll just go around to the other board members and for any other comments or questions. So please, Tyler and Tracy, go ahead.
Hello, my name's Tyler. I've been collecting cans and bottles, and I've been redeeming them at the Walpole Redemption, Yankee Spirits, and other stores for money to raise for charities. I donate to different charities. The main charities I usually do is the Food Pantry and St. Vincent de Paul and LifeWorks, which I receive services because of my disability. And
the total amount.
The total amount we raise is close to
$11,975.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's a lot of money.
Wow. That's fantastic, Tyler. That's fantastic, Tyler. Well, thank you so much. So
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll go around now to each of the board members, and if they have a little comment or a question, we can hear from them at this point. So David, why don't we start with you, please?
Great job, Tyler. Certainly have been watching your efforts along the way, and I certainly it's great that the town has been supporting you, but it's even greater that you've been supporting our town, and we certainly appreciate it.
Thank you. Today I went all the way up to Newton to pick up a couple bags, and we're making a couple trips to Rhode Island soon because some guy has 4,000 cans for us.
Wow. 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 You're gonna start needing a dump truck, I think, for some of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nancy, please.
Yeah, I do.
Sorry. Tyler, I just want to say thank you for being such a role model. It's so great to see positivity. It's been such a downer, such a bummer, so much sadness, and to get to see somebody shine so bright, it's absolutely wonderful. Thank you for everything you're doing.
You're welcome. And also last week, I actually made a donation towards my childhood best friend, Lauren, who happens to work at the same hospital where my mom works. A couple of years ago, she was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos, and I also been giving her some checks to use towards the organization to help find a research on a cure for it.
And she's a Walpole resident.
And she is a Walpole resident too.
Yeah, that's great. Great.
Great
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Mark?
Yeah, I would just say congratulations, Tyler. You're doing a great job. I don't use Facebook very much, but I do go on Facebook once a week to see who you've donated money to that week. So, a lot of people are keeping track of what you're doing and making donations, which is great. So keep up the great work.
I will.
Great. And last but not least, Jim O'Neill, please.
Hi, Tyler, and welcome tonight, and thanks for being here, and thanks for everything that you're doing for the town, and just keep up the good work. Thanks again.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So thank you, Tyler. It really is, and as Nancy alluded to, it really is a bright light in this time that we're going through. So keep up the good work, and please do let the select board know if we can support you and help you in any way. It's really a great example to the rest of the community, everything you're doing. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Have a good night, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Moving on to the next item under appointments is a vote to appoint candidate Miss Kelsey Bernal to the position of police officer. I see that Chief John Carmichael is with us tonight. Chief, I turn it over to you.
Yes, good evening, and thank you for recognizing Tyler. We've also had the opportunity to meet with him on a few occasions, and such an amazing person, real inspiration.
Yeah.
And he's such a great kid. It's nice. So thank you for having us tonight. It's an honor to be here to introduce you to police candidate Kelsey Bernal. We hope to recommend her for the position of police officer with the Walpole Police Department. Kelsey is a graduate of the 11th ROC at Randolph Police Academy, not too far away. She was originally appointed by the UMass Police Department, and after she got into the academy, she was furloughed, and that was due to the pandemic, as well as some budget cuts and loss of population on the campus, which was very unfortunate. However, Kelsey stayed in the academy as a self-sponsor, and she made her way all the way through the academy and graduated. She was picked up by Northeastern University PD, and then she was stolen away by us. She's from Bellingham, Massachusetts, which is a couple towns over, and she is a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. Did serve 4 years. A lot of her tour was served over in Japan, and her MOS was in marine logistics. And during our interview process with her, we felt that she was definitely somebody that fits into the mold of the Walpole Police Department. She's very community police oriented. She speaks fluent Spanish, and she's also got very good command presence, but also very approachable, a nice personality, and what we like to see in our offices. So she comes very recommended by her superior officers and her other former service-related occupations in the Marines and the police department. And so for these reasons, we would like to ask the board for your consideration in appointing Kelsey to be our 6th female police officer of the Walpole Police Department.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Yeah, and we've all been able to read up with the information that you gave us and the career thus far that Ms. Bernal has had. So thank you for providing all that information. So what we'll do again here, Ms. Bernal, is kind of hear from you on the position and how it appeals to you and what you were looking for in a job and in this position with the Walpole Police Department. And then we'll go around to the committee members or the board members, and with any comments or questions they may have. So if you could start us, please.
I mentioned with the chief, or to the chief and the deputy chief in my interviews, the one thing the Marine Corps really gave me was a sense of family with work, and combining that work environment and not making it feel like I'm going to work with coworkers, but I'm going to work with best friends and family that I love seeing every day, and just having this tight-knit camaraderie within every place I worked. And I had the honor of serving with other people. So far, what I've seen from the officers I've come in contact with at Walpole Police Department, that's exactly what I've encountered. Everybody seems to have a very strong, tight-knit bond with each other. And it just, to me, I want to be somewhere where I can enjoy working and it doesn't feel like I'm going to work. It feels like I'm just going home to go do my job, but do my job with my family around me. I live in Bellingham. I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island. My mom raised me on her own. She did a great job. And the one thing that she taught me was, you have to be strong, you have to be assertive, but you have to be kind and you have to be sympathetic and you have to remember that, people, you're a person just as much as everybody else is. And that's the number one thing I want to bring to policing and especially to the community that you all live in is I want to be a part of your community. I don't want to just be someone who works here and then goes home at the end of the day, but I want to interact with everyone just as much as I can with the restrictions of COVID, of course. And I want to meet and put myself out there in a way that people see me and they know that they can approach me or they can come up to me with just to say hi or have a question or anything like that. And I want to learn just as much as I can from everybody else in this community because I'm not from this community, but I want to learn and eventually feel as if I live here just as well as everybody else. And I want to just do as much as I can to be a part of the community you all live in and help you guys feel safe and know that you guys can sleep well at night while I do my job as well.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So we'll go around to the board now. David, if we could start with you, please.
Well, I also grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, and I will tell you that this town is very welcoming, and I'm happy to welcome you. If the chief, I have a lot of confidence in the chief's ability to find great candidates, and I'm sure that you rise above the rest, and I'm looking forward to meeting you at some later time, and hopefully not knocking on my window, but just in our daily lives here. And I'm sure our town will appreciate you and welcome you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Nancy, please.
I just want to say welcome, welcome to our Blue family. And it's very exciting to go, especially to go up to a sixth female. I know my female predecessor, Judy Conroy, would be former selectman, would be very excited because she was on the board when she was really pushing and driving for us to include more women. And so it's a very exciting milestone. And your resume is very impressive. So thank you for choosing Walpole.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Nancy. And Mark, please.
Yeah, Kelsey, I would say welcome to Walpole. As I'm sure you've heard, Walpole's big on community policing. And based on your comments, I think you'll fit in very well. And as David said, I look forward to seeing you at some point as things open up more and Walpole gets back to normal the way it was before the whole COVID crisis happened. So welcome aboard.
Thank you, sir.
And Jim O'Neill, please.
Yeah, hi, Kelsey, and welcome to Walpole. It's exciting to have you on board. You have a very impressive background, and let me start by thanking you for your military service. Really appreciate that. I also was very impressed by your comments around wanting to become part of the community, your thoughts on being empathetic and learning about the community. I think those are really, really important. And, given our emphasis on, policing in the 21st century and community policing, these are very, very, very important traits and characteristics. So I'm really pleased that you're joining us and look forward to meeting you in person someday. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, sir.
I'll make a motion to appoint Kelsey Bernal to the position of Walpole Police Officer with the Walpole Police Department.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Ben, aye. Motion passes 5-0-0. Congratulations, Officer Bernal. Thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing you out there, and best of luck.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right, fantastic. So moving on to the next item of business, I think that we are going to skip down to new business because we have a couple of folks who are going to be joining us, and we are substantially ahead of schedule here for a 7:30 appointment. So we're going to move on to new business. The first item under new business is a discussion of the proposed joint committee on inclusionary zoning. There was a letter that we received from the chair of the Walpole Housing Partnership, Andrew Flowers, and I believe it was almost 2 weeks ago now. And essentially, this item deals with the fact that the planning board has had a couple of discussions about inclusionary zoning, about their interest and support in varying degrees for inclusionary zoning, and interest from planning board members to form a joint committee between planning board and the Walpole Housing Partnership and the Zoning Board of Appeals, ZBA, to work towards finding, what is a good inclusionary zoning bylaw or something similar, the right answer for our town. And so, being that this board appoints the WHP and appoints the ZBA, Chair Flowers had sent that letter essentially asking for our input, to have some discussion and to give our input on the makeup of that committee and the direction that they would seek to head, which, was outlined in his letter. So at this point, why don't we just go around and I've spoken with Mr. Flowers about it. I've also watched the planning board meetings where they discuss this, and being a member of the WHP myself, I'm intimately familiar with the zoning bylaw that was proposed and some of the work that has been ongoing since then. So if we could just go around and have some input discussions, if there's any questions, and really understand, how the board feels about this. Ultimately, what would happen is the board would answer Mr. Flowers' letter and either say, no, the board is ambivalent about inclusionary zoning and we don't see a need for a subcommittee. Or we would reply to the letter and say, yes, we see the need for inclusionary zoning in our town, and we would encourage these groups, the WHP, the ZBA, and the planning board, to come together, a couple of members from each board, and to work towards, finding a zoning bylaw that might work for the town. So those are really the choices before us. So why don't we just start now with a discussion. David, if we could start with you, please.
I'm not sure that, it's fair to categorize a disagreement with setting up this committee as being ambivalent about inclusionary zoning. I think it would be just not be willing to set up this committee. There's certainly this inclusionary zoning bylaw had previously gotten full interest and discussion without a committee such as this in its previous iteration. I don't know why this is, a necessary process at this point, and certainly being opposed to this committee wouldn't cause someone to be categorized as ambivalent to the process. But I do have a question about what did the planning board vote that they would be interested in this committee, and what was that vote?
Yes, they did. It was 3-2, I believe,
Okay.
in favor of, pursuing or interest in this.
So what is the intention?
I'm not going to characterize it at all, David. Certainly, whether somebody is against it or ambivalent to it or for it, that's for this discussion to take place. So I don't mean to characterize that before we begin, but for sure.
So I think certainly the Affordable Housing Committee had a charge to not only look at, was also to look at some ways to reduce, or at least in my mind, ways to reduce costs of buildings, looking at the zoning ordinance, bring back open space zoning, bring back in-law apartments, look at other ways to improve or lowering the cost of building in the town. It's clear that, I don't know, I thought we were excluded from putting forward another exclusionary zoning bylaw for a period of 2 years, and I'm not sure what the intention is here by going forward with that. There are other things that they should also be focusing on, and given that it failed, I think go forward with those other things and come back to this after the 2-year moratorium has taken place. I'm not in favor of creating another committee to do this at this point.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you, David. Yeah, and so to answer that question, it can come back within the 2 years, and there's a couple of things that would need to be satisfied. One of the options that could be satisfied is having a substantial change to the bylaw. And so I know that some of the discussions that the planning board had were substantial changes to the bylaw, changing the entity, the designated decision-making entity, changing the percentage of housing that's required, some really substantial changes. So if that was to be agreed upon and come forward, then that could come forward within 2 years because it is substantially changed. And then also, particularly if it has the support of the planning board, if it's something that the planning board is willing to sponsor rather than the select board, then that would also, they would also be able to bring it back within the 2 years in that standpoint. And I know from listening to their discussions, David, at the planning board and in the WHP meetings, that one of the reasons that that this is still in the discussion is not only because it is needed so badly, but also because the state legislature recently, about a month ago, I guess it was, maybe a little more, changed the threshold for those types of votes to 50%, whereas previously they were required a supermajority of 67%. And when town meeting, and right as you said, David, town meeting debated this, and there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of research done on this. Town meeting was, I want to say it was 59% or 60% voted in favor. And so it didn't pass, as you say, it didn't meet the 67%. But the state legislature has identified that as one of the main hurdles to towns being able to control their own destiny and to be able to have affordable housing on their own terms, rather than continually being subjected to 40Bs. So realizing that, the state legislature said, well, yeah, this is a burden that we're placing on towns, and rightfully so. I can't tell you, David, how correct it is that they've made that decision. And if they had been able to do that even 6 months beforehand, we would now have an inclusionary zoning bylaw. As I said, it would have passed with over 10% in favor over that 50% margin. So those are just some of the reasons, David. Just information for this discussion.
So then just put it back on the committee. What do you need another committee to sit and change those numbers for? Just that's
just to have yeah.
I'd
encourage you to go back
and trying to create a buy-in from these three committees and this new committee, but
trying to create consensus, David. Yeah, that's just it. Getting planning board buy-in and
I see no reason for the committee itself.
Okay, great. Moving on to Nancy, please.
I think I'll go last. I want to hear the rest of the discussion.
Okay. Mark, please.
Yeah, I think this is a good idea. I'm very supportive of it. I remember some of the ZBA and some of the planning board members really wish they had been more a part of the discussion. And I think this is a great way to get, the Walpole Housing Partnership together with the land use boards, ZBA and planning, and really have a chance to go back over all the details. And it's great from my point of view as a select board member, because we can get a lot of great feedback from the ZBA and the planning board, since they're the experts on, planning and Walpole and zoning and all those kind of things. So I just see it as a great opportunity to get it right. And, if they want to choose to make a change and have it sponsored by somebody other than the select board, I think that would be great. If they want to change the board with the authority, it doesn't matter to me because I don't understand the nuances, but either the ZBA or the planning board could be in charge of this process, whatever makes the most sense. So I think by pulling the three groups together, it's a great opportunity to get it right and have a lot of great discussion. And I look forward to seeing how that plays out.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Jim O'Neill?
Yeah, and I agree. First of all, I was pleased that the planning board took the issue up and discussed it, and that they were supportive of revisiting the question. I think it's really important that be driven by the planning board. I do think there's a lot that needs to be thought about in the inclusionary zoning bylaw based on all the input that we received at town meeting, which I thought was really valuable. So I think it makes a lot of sense to get a group together who understands the issue and who is articulate on the various clauses within the bylaw, proposed bylaw, and can address, thoughtfully what the changes might be. I also think it'll be valuable to have cross-board cooperation on this, just because it's a difficult issue and one that is going to take a lot of cooperation to work through. So I like the idea. I think one of the questions that Chairman Flowers was asking us to respond to was the makeup of the board. I think having the three members from the WHP makes the most sense because they're the ones that are really charged with driving the process. I guess if the board wanted to just go with the one as option A, that would be fine too. But I really think having the three members from the Walpole Housing group would make the would put the right level of emphasis on the committee. So I'd be inclined to go with option 2 at this point, or B, whatever it was.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree, Jim. I think that's the best way to go. It seemed like that's what the planning board would prefer as well. So, as far as having option B. So, Nancy, please.
So my question is, what did the ZBA think? How did they respond? What were their comments?
Well, their comments on being a part of this board. I mean, we would ask them to take part. I mean, they want to know what the select, as everybody, it seems Nancy wants to hear what the select board says before anybody does anything. So, they would take part if we asked them to.
So my concern is that in all past boards and committees, the zoning board has requested not to. And part of that is because they like to remain neutral. And if they join a committee like this, and then they're weighing in on this committee, how does that affect them later when they are ruling in on decisions and making decisions when they've definitely taken part in making these rules? They try to do such a good job of just being independent of all of that, that I know that years past, is even with the master plan implementation committee doing the town master plan, they take a step back and really don't want to be involved in the process, because later at some point, what comes out of all of these things, they have to then rule on and decide on. So my concern is that it is putting them at risk. And I don't know that that's something that we want to go against. So as far as setting up a joint committee, it's a good idea, but I'm not sure that the ZBA, number one, would be interested, and number two, that it's a good idea for us to do that.
Yeah, Nancy, one of the things that people were saying during the debate about the IZB was, what about the ZBA and why wasn't the ZBA more involved? And that came up at the planning board meetings a couple times. So we have some people saying the ZBA shouldn't be involved, and we have some people saying they should be, and that's why they'd vote against it. So, I don't think it would put us, the town or the ZBA members, in any legal jeopardy to be involved in this. They follow the code, the word. And so whatever the words are, that's what they follow, and whether they were involved in making those or not, it really is irrelevant. I mean, we appoint them. So it's not, the ZBA is a non-issue here. What we really need is the housing partnership and the planning board to work together, and so we can all be on the same page moving forward. And that's what the planning board's requested. I mean, that's where this is coming from. The planning board voted 3-2 that we make this and we loop in the ZBA. And so, we're bringing it to the board, and with that in mind.
So I appreciate that that's your thought. I'm going to disagree with you. And I'm going to say that my recommendation is that we should ask the ZBA's opinion before we put together a committee and decide that they should be on it. Just like the planning board debated it, did a great job, and came up with the thought that they'd like to be included, I think that we should give the same respect to the ZBA, and before we put a committee together, we should ask their opinion.
Yeah. I mean, frankly, Nancy, if they don't want to put somebody on the board, they don't have to. This isn't a formal board before the town. There's no quorums. It's simply fact-finding so people can work together. So if it was that the ZBA found that for whatever reason they were just adamantly opposed to this and didn't want to take part, they wouldn't have to. This is just a recommendation from this board saying that the WHP can work together with the planning board and that we'll support that effort. The planning board wants the ZBA involved. We can ask them to be involved. If they say no, then it is what it is. But, continually running around to various people checking in is not going to make anything happen. So no one's going to force them to take part if they don't want to, for sure. So being that as it is, I'll make a motion, if I can find them, to compose a joint committee of 7 members, 2 planning board, 2 ZBA, and 3 housing partnership, to the extent that they wish to take part in proceeding with this effort.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. David?
Sorry, I'm in 2 meetings at once.
No, David, hang on. I'm sorry, Nancy, did you have something to add? I'm sorry, Nancy, were you going to add to that?
No.
Okay. David, no. Nancy?
No.
Mark?
Yes.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben, aye. 3-0, the motion passes. And we will move on to, let's see, do we have everybody here yet? I don't believe we do, Jim, do we? We're still missing Amy, I think. So we'll move on to item number 2 under new business, which is a vote to appoint Mary McNamara Cullinane as a member of the Cultural Council. And Aoife, we had spoke earlier, she had a bit of a layoff from that, but is a previous member, correct? So that's how she has come to be part of the Cultural Council. So any comment from the board on Mary McNamara Cullinane as a member of the Cultural Council? Being that there is none, I'd hear a motion.
I'll make a motion to appoint Mary McNamara Cullinane as a member of the Cultural Council.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there's no further discussion, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. David? I'll come back to David. Nancy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben, aye. David, are you available to vote?
I'm sorry, I was listening to the other
Okay.
meeting. What do we?
Okay, very good. So we will.
We've had a motion to appoint Mary McNamara Cullinane as a member of the Cultural Council.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank
I'm
you.
going to leave this meeting, actually. I'm going to stick with the other one.
You're leaving the board meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, David. Okay. Take care. Bye. So the motion passes 5-0-0 approving Mary McNamara Cullinane as a member of the Cultural Council.
So Ben, if I could just jump in, I just texted with
Please.
Amy.
Yeah.
She is tied up in another meeting, which we knew was going to happen. So I think on our end, we do have Sean here. I know Ashley's on our end. So, you know, we're more or less looking for some direction from the board. And Amy said she was available if I needed her via text. So
Okay.
bear with me if
Well-
the legal comes up and I can just text her.
Okay. All right. So we'll move back to appointments, and being as the time is after 7:30 p.m., we have a discussion of the South Walpole intersection at Washington Street, Neponset Street, Summer Street, and Water Street, also known as the South Walpole Common, and a possible vote. So I know that a lot of folks are watching this closely. It is part and parcel with the comprehensive permit application, the 40B, at 55 Summer Street, being pursued by Omni, the developer. And just to kind of set this up for the board here tonight, and we want to be really clear on what the board is voting on. I know that there was some confusion over the last week or so from residents and members of the public. You know, the board in this case has no decision-making authority because it is under a comprehensive permit, the 40B process. The decision-making authority is the ZBA, the Zoning Board of Appeals, solely. The select board has no say. However, town council has given us, legal advice that since the select board are the road commissioners, I believe is our official title in that capacity, that we should discuss any matter that is pertaining to the roads prior to the ZBA taking it up. And so the motions before the board tonight that we may hear would really preclude the board or ask us to tell the ZBA that we're okay with them considering road changes at the South Walpole Common, or we are not okay with them as the road commissioners doing that. The ZBA would then take that information as part of the comprehensive permit process that they're undergoing, and they would make their own decision as to whether they would accept that. At that point is then when there would be a process initiated to take a look at designs in that area, talk about where the road's going to go. Are there going to be lights? Are there going to be signs? Is there going to be striping in various areas? So we are nowhere near that point now, and that is not going to be decided in this meeting, nor are we going to decide whether or not the ZBA will make a decision in that regard. We are simply here as road commissioners to make a recommendation to the ZBA. So hopefully that gives everyone a little bit of background. I'd like to thank Jim Johnson and Amy Kuhl, the town council, for putting together a really comprehensive memo to us. And the last bit I'd like to say about that is I'm hopeful that, it was really great for me personally to watch all of the public comment that had taken place at the ZBA on this issue. ZBA has talked about the intersection and South Walpole Common a couple of times. They've received a lot of public comment, both in writing and verbally in meetings that residents were able to attend. Jim Johnson was able to provide that to the board, and that was exceptionally useful for me personally to have before we get into this conversation. So we have with us tonight Mr. Sean Reardon from Tetra Tech, who is the company who is acting as the reviewer, and the correct nomenclature is escaping me at this moment. Sean, the reviewer for the comprehensive permit. And Amy Kuhl, who is the legal counsel, is not with us yet, but she may join us. She may join us here shortly. So, Jim Johnson, why don't we start with you? Were there any facts or figures that I missed in that fast-paced summary?
So just a couple of brief items I want to touch upon. The reason you guys being requested to consider this matter now is because, as it stands now, the ZBA has an extension until March 2nd to continue the public hearing and open session. I am not clear if the applicant it's up to the applicant whether or not he wants to continue to extend that. And that is why I've asked your board to weigh in now, because I want to allow the ZBA some time to get whatever the board decides into their decision, because once it's closed, they can no longer take any information in. So the parameters of the intersection agreement, as it stands now, the applicant agrees to cover up to $500,000 of improvements to the intersection in South Walpole, which is roughly estimated to be about 50% of the project. The town will waive $500,000 building permit fees, which again is about 50% of the project. Omni will agree to handle the construction and construction administration of the intersection improvements. So I'm asking your board to do one of the following. The select board vote to ask the ZBA not to pursue mitigation for the offsite improvements for the South Walpole intersection, or the select board vote to request the ZBA incorporate the offsite mitigation for the improvements to the South Walpole intersection into their decision. Right now, what's been viewed and by the ZBA and discussed by some of the residents in the area is a conceptual plan. It's not down. It's a 30,000 foot view. It's not down in the details. That will take some time to hash out. Obviously, the residents will have a lot of input there if that's the route the select board decides to pursue. And the reason I've asked Sean Reardon to be on here is he's the one who's helped to kind of do a lot of the traffic studies down there now and basically give us some conceptual plans. Do we want a rotary in there? Do we want a T intersection that I call it? Do you want to leave it as is? What's the current grade of the intersection, which currently is an F? If upgraded, they project it will be approximately a B or so. So that's one of the reasons you folks are being asked to consider this, to meet the deadline by March 2nd.
Yeah.
So we got so I have Town Engineer Carl Baldoff here. We have Sean Reardon from Tetra Tech, Ashley Clark, who's been working on this project for a year and a half now, Chief Bailey, Chief Carmichael, Deputy Chief Kelleher, DPW Director Rick Mattson. I've tried to kind of get everybody on here, and along with Deputy Chief Barry, who's been helping out with the turning radiuses and everything for this project for the fire truck. So that's it for me for now.
Great. No, thank you, Jim. Very, very informative. And for sure, I just want to highlight the fact that we're not actually deciding tonight if it's going to be a stop sign or if it's going to be the same or if it's going to be a light. But we are here to decide if some mitigation is going to take place. So, Sean, if you could just kind of going off of what Jim had said from a general perspective, tell us a little bit about the common that's down there now, what you know about it, and the process that you've been through with the common and the intersection there in this comprehensive permit process with Omni.
Sure, and good evening, everybody. Sean Reardon with Tetra Tech. Just to kind of clarify something Jim said, all of the analysis that's been done to date has been done by the applicant's engineer. Our role as your reviewer has been to review it to make sure it was done properly. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the numbers that you hear now are work that was done by the applicant's consultant and that we reviewed. The bottom line is that the project is a pretty significant project. It's going to add about 10% of new volume to that intersection. And then as anybody will tell you, that intersection has problems in both the morning and the evening and in two different directions. So what makes it a real big challenge is there's no real consistent flow in terms of it's in one way in the morning and one way in the evening. It kind of comes in at odd angles. So it makes it hard to manage with just say a stop sign or something like that. And there are basically two left turns that kill the intersections. And what we looked at is we said, well, you guys are, you don't really have an obligation to fix the intersection, but you are making a problem worse. So what we want you to do is explore different options that as a project that you end up making a net positive benefit to that function of the intersection. So we challenged them with developing several different alternatives and seeing which one worked the best and what offered the best kind of cost benefit. We got quite a bit of pushback initially, but eventually they acquiesced and did the analysis and did a really good job. In the overwhelming performance favorite was just a simple T signalized intersection. And the reason why the signalized intersection works so well is because it manages those left turns a lot more efficiently than a stop sign does, particularly high volume left turns. And that's what it is. That's what causes the problems each time is the high volume turns from Washington onto Water Street and the high volume lefts from Summer onto Washington. And the signal does a really good job of processing that volume and making sure people don't have to stay very long. The queues go down from say 500 to 600 feet down to 200 feet. Delay times go from over 2 minutes sometimes to down under 30 seconds. So really a marked increase in performance at that intersection. And to Jim's point, what we heard at the meeting was a lot of really focused, good, productive comments. But I was afraid that people thought the die had been cast and that this was the intersection design that was going to happen. And that's not further from the truth. It's like you said, it's at the very beginning stages. We had to come up with a plan just to make sure it fit in the limited geometry that's out there, and to test how well it would perform. But and I felt kind of bad because the developer took a lot of heat, and we really did push them to do this because we felt it would be something that would basically make that intersection function a lot better, make the pedestrian movements a lot safer. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And why don't we go around? I know that we have a lot of people on here tonight that can answer questions both from the town and from the various departments. But given the initial stages, why don't we start with, let's see, Chief Carmichael. If we could start with you, and we'll just go with Chief Carmichael and Chief Bailey, Mr. Baldoff. If we could just hear from everybody briefly, their input on the situation there, the South Walpole Common, we'd appreciate it. So please.
Sure, sir. Originally, when we started to talk about the external infrastructure of the project, there was a lot of, that's not our responsibility type of thing. And I'm very happy that the developers are working with the town, because that area has certainly been an area of concern over the last couple of years, and going back with the issue of the train coming through and the crossing and the pedestrian crossings that cross over the railroad tracks and then to the school and everything. So there was a lot of concerns about that area. We obviously have the unique traffic issue aside from the morning and evening commutes of the stadium events, and however many, we had a good year this year because nobody was there, but that's always a challenging issue for us and for South Walpole. I am certainly in support of making sure that we make that area safer and provide some infrastructure improvements. I was certainly liked the T intersections with the signalization in the beginning, but I understand that a lot of the neighborhood and the residents of South Walpole weren't very supportive of that. And I know we're just talking about conceptual right now, but and they have to live there. So it's important, obviously, that the town listens to that feedback, and I know that we will, and we do. So, but obviously, from our perspective, from the police department, we just want it to be safe. And as long as it's safe, especially coming from the project and coming from, DeLapper and from Schufelt, and for the kids to be able to get to school safely and to get to the church and the daycare center safely, or to walk up to Papagino's safely. And there have been upgrades there already with the train and the MBTA, but we certainly could use some more work up there in the future.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Chief Bailey, if you could offer any input as well on this and how you view any work that may or may not take place down there.
I would echo Chief Carmichael's comments. Safety is first and foremost. As far as the plan goes, whatever they determine in the end, turning radius is obviously a big concern of ours with the vehicles that we have for emergency vehicles, and any queuing up of vehicles that's going to impede that is obviously a concern. So at this point in time, other than the safety aspects, I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you, Chief. And Mr. Baldoff, anything to add there from the town's perspective?
Also echo the comments of Chief Carmichael and Bailey and Mr. Reardon. What did it for both myself and Director Mattson from a public works point of view was this provided a very clean, straight path for pedestrians, and it crosses them at Washington Street in a safe, signal-controlled crossing, and that's where crosswalks should be. And it accommodated the proposed development traffic and actually improved the level of service in the intersection. So those, and then I'm speaking of the original T intersection design, signal design. those things were immediately supported by us. We continue to support them, and we appreciate the efforts of everybody in here. There was a good level of plan development. The developer really came up with this thing. The town administrator worked very hard to have this, and others, to get this occur. So we were pleased to have it go down that road. We think that it serves well in that capacity. However, we do understand that, that more work has to be done, and we're flexible in terms of the outcome of a solution on this.
Yeah. Thank you, Carl. And Ashley, do you have anything to add, Ashley, on the process here or any of the points folks have made thus far?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I would agree with the 4 gentlemen who spoke before me. And I would just add that from what I heard, there was a lot of concern about what happens with the common there. And I think there might be, I don't know if this is the case or not, but I think that if the select board recommends that the ZBA pursue this a little bit further, special attention should be given to planning for the treatment of that park. So there might be a potential to set aside, $10,000 or $15,000 to hire a consultant to work with the South Walpole residents to come up with a plan on preserving the sign there, or what kind of landscaping they'd like to see, if there's a way to incorporate street furniture or intergenerational kind of outdoor equipment. So I just want to raise that as a potential opportunity that might want to be considered. But otherwise, I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Ashley. Great points there as well on the possibilities for the future. All right, so I really appreciate everyone being on tonight and giving their input. It is a really important decision that has to be made here for us, and then also for the ZBA. So why don't we go around now and just hear comments, feedback, questions from the board. David is no longer with us. So Nancy, why don't we start with you, please?
I'll actually wait till last. I'm interested to listen, and it looks like David's back.
Okay. Mark, why don't we start with you, please?
Sure. I did get a chance to watch the ZBA meeting, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago now, where there was a lot of feedback. And I understand people's perspectives, about the South Walpole Island, or whatever we want to call that area. And how that's important to everyone who lives down there. I've driven through, I obviously don't live in South Walpole, but I've driven through there during game day, and it's a mess. Lately, I've driven by Boyden School at pickup time, and it's been a mess. Due to COVID, a lot of people are driving. I am in favor of asking the ZBA to try to do something for that intersection. I agree with everything that's been said, that I think a lot of work needs to happen to find something that will work to speed up traffic, as well as something that would work for the people that live and work in the South Walpole area. So I am in favor of that, and I appreciate that, everybody's comments who came to that ZBA meeting, and a couple of people have reached out to me as well. So.
All right, thank you, Mark. Jim O'Neill, please.
Yeah, and thanks, Ben. I have a few questions that I think I want to direct to Mr. Reardon. I also watched the ZBA meeting and listened to the concerns from the residents, and so there were a couple that I just want to poke at myself and just hear firsthand from Mr. Reardon what his thoughts are. So there were lots of concerns around traffic flow and traffic backup, and I'd lump for the first thing that I want you to address is there's 3 aspects to it. One is from the light at where it would be at Washington Street back up Summer and to the railroad tracks, and the likelihood that we could see backups where cars were literally backed up from the light across the railroad tracks, and what the traffic study is telling us about that. The second one is the Boyden School. I understand that the cars park along Washington Street at the Boyden School and could conceivably extend back into the intersection with the light, and wanted to find out how we're thinking about that, because that doesn't sound safe to me. And then there is the Washington Street extension part, where there are residents that live on that street that need to come out. If you look at the way the road layout is, it's a really awkward turn onto Washington Street, going through the light, up toward Boyden. And the concerns that I heard there were concerns of being able to get out of the side street, because the side street wouldn't be accommodated by the light, of course. So I'd really like to hear about those three things, and what your professional view is on, the current suggested configuration, and what your models have told you about those traffic flows.
Sure. Thanks, Jim. So again, the models are the applicant's models that we reviewed, but what they show is the queues if the current intersection geometry stays the same and the project is built 5 years from now, the queues approaching approaching the intersection from Summer Street will get pretty long and come close to backing up to the railroad track. Now, remember, these are statistical models, so I envision a scenario where, yeah, that's a possibility in the future. The bottom line is, with a signal there, that's not likely to ever happen, because the queues will be so much shorter during that transition time. Almost a third shorter. So from 600 feet to 200 feet. So quite a significant difference. The question regarding, I think your second one was about the Boynton School queuing. So admittedly, I'm not that familiar with that situation. All I know is that Washington Street next down. So there's an awkward situation all along that corridor with the queuing. The bottom line is, if we reconfigure that intersection, it brings in the potential to do things that could improve that. So at present, there's a few spaces, sort of transition space in front of the church and the daycare center. As part of an improvement at that intersection, there are other things that we could do to make more room and more accommodation to make it safer. Under no circumstances would the eventual design end up making that situation worse. We'd have to come up with solutions for that. And then as far as Washington Street extension, yeah, that's a challenging arrangement, but that whole intersection right now is really difficult to navigate. And my biggest concern is it's very difficult to cross from a pedestrian standpoint during high traffic volumes. There's no protection. They're all long sweeping corners. So speeds, there's nothing really to slow people down and control people. So we tend to think of two things. We think of kind of intersections as doing two good things. One is it takes speeds down, but it processes people faster, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We get people through the intersection at lower speeds. So what that does is, when people slow down, we get better brakes, we get more processing time, we get a better chance for other people to move through the intersection. When things are all sweepy and open like they are right now, that dominant movement dominates the whole intersection and everything else queues back. So I really do think this is something that can help on all those cases. And that's why we pushed so heavy for it in the beginning. And we looked at several options. We looked at a rotary. That was my original instinct, was that maybe a rotary would work real well. But through the group meeting that we had, it pretty much was an obvious thing that it just didn't work that great for anybody. And that we came back to the signal was really the overwhelming favorite.
Okay. I just want to make sure that, particularly that, because it sounds like there's not so much of a concern about the light going back to the railroad tracks, but it sounds like you're unsure on the Boyden School question and the Washington Street extensions question. So I think we have to carry those forward in the conversation and make sure they're addressed. Even if that means doing some kind of reconfiguration work at the Boyden School itself, I don't think it's something that we want where we have a tail of traffic into Washington Street there. That just sounds really unsafe to me.
I agree with you, Jim, and my biggest concern about it is that I think the challenges with the queuing go beyond the intersection. In that Washington Street, as you approach Boynton School, narrows down quite a bit.
Yep.
And so I'm hesitant to say there's a solution within the context of just redoing the intersection. To your point, it may go beyond that. It may go beyond to sort of looking at process at the school and looking at other widening options for Washington Street.
Let me come back, and I actually should have started here, but let me come back to this question about, you know, the modeling that's been done and who's done the modeling and all that. Jim, maybe this is first a question to you, but when we first talked with Omni, I thought that the arrangement that we had was that they were going to pay for our traffic consultant. So somebody who did the work for the town, but Omni would pay for it. Is that not where we landed?
Well, what Omni is paying for, and actually jump in if I'm missing something there, is for Sean's company, Tetra Tech, to come in and assist us with reviewing this. Sean, you're also helping with all the conservation.
Correct.
Issues and,
right. So we review all of the work that Omni's consultant prepared.
Okay.
And they have to do the preparation because they're the ones that understand the project.
Yep.
That's really what the key analysis point is. We review it, and there's very strict standards for how this work gets done. And we have very talented traffic people that do this work. They've been doing this work for decades. And we review everything they do very thoroughly.
So I just want to make sure that's the case because we're placing our reliance on you to represent this other work that Omni has paid for. And I want to make sure that we're all comfortable that your evaluation and your understanding of what they've done and all that is strong enough so that when you're representing your views to us that we can place reliance on those. So maybe you can just give me a little more assurance around that.
Yeah, and we spoke about this earlier. In the beginning, it wasn't so rosy. We had to battle a bit with the developer because in our mind, they weren't doing what they needed to make sure that problems were getting addressed.
Mm-hmm.
We did about 2/3 of the way through sort of get a shift in that attitude. And instead of getting sort of just rote work and things that sort of just move the issue along, they really developed quite a few very detailed options, considered everything, even driveways and things like that, right-of-way issues. So, I have a high degree of confidence in the work that's been produced to date. In the beginning, we had our issues, but we worked through those issues and they provided a lot of supplemental information. Our company is a very, very highly qualified and well-regarded design firm when it comes to highway and infrastructure improvements for roadways. So, I'm completely confident in my team's ability to review that and to make sure that the needs of the town are taken care of.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to add, so a little bit of context. When the ZBA selects a peer reviewer, so just taking a step even further back, we asked for scopes of work from different specialties that we've identified will need peer review. So in this case, we did design peer review and the Tetra Tech's review. That's selected by the ZBA. So yes, the developer pays for that review. And Sean came recommended at Town Council Amy Quessel. And this board, I think, recently reviewed a similar request appeal for a different 40B project. So that's another route that process can go.
Good. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. So, when I think about why is all that important? Because we've got a situation here that in my mind we need to address. We've got this big honking 40B going in, and that's just unfortunately a fact of life. It doesn't seem as though doing nothing is an option. And it does seem as though the only way we're going to be able to resolve the traffic situation down there and the safety issues that go with it are to disrupt the common down in South Walpole, which is admittedly a beautiful place. So if we're going to do that, it better work is where I'm coming from on it. Because we've got a lot of people who are very unhappy about this situation, and I don't blame them. And so this solution has really got to work. And as we go forward with it, and I realize we're not in final designs or anything like that right now, but as we go forward with it, any accommodations that can be done to minimize the impact while solving the problem, and that's the most important thing, you got to solve the problem, but minimizing the impacts while solving the problem, I really am, I'm going to be looking for that.
Yeah. And I think on a good note, the fortunate thing is there's a lot of space out there to work in. Mm-hmm. Usually when we get in situations like this, we have homes that are encroaching on the intersection, or we have a limited space in which to try to implement complicated solutions. Out there right now, you've got a lot of space, which is great. So I think when this is all said and done, we're actually going to net out with more green space. The question is, to Ashley's point, is how do we best utilize that and best target that? But I think that in the end result is going to be a substantial increase in performance and safety and all of those things.
And just to piggyback on what Sean's saying there with the green space, I would definitely involve all the residents in that area.
Yep.
So between Rosemarie, Joanne, Julie, Erica, I'd have all those people involved. We'd have a public input session. I know they've already reached out to myself and the chiefs, and it would be something that they're happy with. It wouldn't just be something that, Sean, don't take offense to this, but people in Sean's area say, this will work. I want the people who live down there to say, yes, we're happy with this. It'll work for us. So.
Yeah, that was going to be my final comment. Was I know that there was a lot of feedback at the ZBA meeting the other day. I assume that with all the ongoing discussions that we're going to have as we go through this process, that we will continue to involve the residents down there and really hopefully strike some kind of a balance here. This is, clearly not a great situation, and I unfortunately don't think there's any alternative, and we've got to try and strike a balance. One of the things that I would be looking for is, we talk about more green space, and maybe there is going to be more green space, but it's also got to be usable green space. So we should be thinking about, as we're configuring that green space, think of the usability of the green space. If you're a resident down there, you don't want to feel like you're sitting on someone's front lawn. So you've got to figure out a way to make that space feel like a separate common area. And I'm no expert on it, so I don't know how to do that, but I hope we don't just incorporate it into the rest of the side of the road, that it has something that differentiates it from the front yards of the people who live there, and that people can feel that they can go onto that new common space and use it and get a lot of benefit out of it as they have the old common space. So those are the things I'm going to be looking for going forward, and thanks for your time. I appreciate it. That's it, Ben.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. And Nancy.
I don't know if David wanted to talk. He's here.
If you want to go first, I do want to speak at some point.
Nancy said she'd like to go last, David. So if you go ahead, please.
Sure. So I had a couple of questions about, so the waiving the 500,000 and fees. How does that relate to and then the developer is going to pay us 500,000 in lieu of fees. So is the town going to have to come up with another 500,000?
No, and if I could speak to this, I believe the projected building fees on this one is if no changes were done, about $1.2 million estimated. That was one of my big concerns too, because I don't want to waive 500, then another 500, and only collect 200 in building permit fees, because that wouldn't cover Mike Yanovich's department's cost or anything. So what Amy is working out as part of the ZBA decision is Omni has agreed to say, yes, we'll cover 500,000 of this cost. Yes, we'll handle the design and construction administration, which is a huge burden on Carl and Rick. I'm seeing that with some of the other projects. So that's going to save time and money on the town's part. So net, the town would collect roughly about 700,000 in building fees instead of the 1.2 million.
Okay, I guess I'm still confused.
And if I could, so David, the total estimated cost of construction and design is about $1 million.
Okay.
For the intersection.
For the intersection. And the applicant is paying for, paying for 500,000 of that. So that comes out of his pocket.
But we're giving him a break on 500 at the same time.
Excuse me?
We're saving him 500 on the building permit fees.
Well, no. So they're paying 500,000 of the $1 million of projected cost.
Okay.
The other $500,000 is coming from deferred building permit fees. So the town doesn't have to allocate any money. All of the money is originating with the applicant. Just 500,000 of it is being redirected to the intersection instead of going to pay building permit fees.
Okay. So it's, in lieu of paying the 500 in building fees, they're paying, they're going to use that as part of their total $1 million contribution.
Correct.
Okay. And plus they're going to give us an extra $200,000 in oversight of a project. Approximately. Is that?
That number, the oversight is in the construction budget.
Okay. Okay. So that's within the budget itself.
Right.
Okay. So they're giving us $300,000 extra. Okay. I get it. It's $1 million. All right. My second thing is, to Mr. O'Neill's point is to being in someone's front lawn. I do agree that in total, there will be more green space. From strictly an aesthetic and a usefulness point of view, it would be nice to close the end of Washington Street in front of the church. Not only is there more space on both sides of that road for the extra green space, it would also look pretty in front of the church. And it also would provide us with a space that we possibly could use. You know, we could put, ask the church if we can use their front lawn for a concert stage or things like that. And so from that perspective, I think, using, and I don't know if that had been looked at, but if you look at at least the GIS version of the mapping, there's a lot more green space on the other side of that Washington Street than there are on that little section that is currently proposed as being closed. So it certainly would add to the park space. The issue, though, is I think, so from a traffic engineering standpoint, if we were to extend Washington Street, have it scoot around to the right to come in face to face with Summer Street, is there more friction there between the two sets of cars, with people wanting to continue on going from Summer to Washington Street, and the crowd from Washington Street attempting to go down towards Water Street? Is that a less desirable solution? And then also the train tracks and the distance from that, if there were a light there, distance from the train tracks to that light where the backups would occur. And then also would think about considering, I believe it's Neponset Street, whether or not you might make that a one-way entering into Neponset Street so that you don't have a four-way. You get back to your two-way intersection in some respects, and just, let the limited traffic go only one inbound in that section, so we don't have to have another set of lights to let people coming out of that intersection, which would add to the queue if we had to, change that lighting. Or I could just, but those are some of the considerations that I would see. I think if we were to do, and this was when I saw this plan, maybe it's, and that might give us a little more length for the queuing to Boyden too. If, you brought that section of the road out a little further. Again,
I think I get what you're saying, and the reason I like that too is because it creates a lot of the green space on the same side of the road as Boynton is. And from what I heard from the community was there's a lot of connectivity between the kids at the school and that common.
Right.
So, it's certainly something we'd be looking to maintain. So to your point, if we could create the green space on the same side of the school in front of the church, that would be great too, because the kids could get to and from it a lot easier. But
yeah, that intersection I don't know, I thought I recall once there being a stop sign at Water Street coming towards Washington Street and away from 1A, but that is a horrible, horrible intersection. And even the people that make that turn come very quickly. You don't know whether you can get out there or not. And, avoiding that would, either plan gets rid of that, which is great. So the only other consideration in looking at the Neponset Street, if, thinking one way or whatever, I don't know. There's a significant parcel back there. I don't know if it'll ever be built on or if it's contaminated. I know there's solar fields there now. But that would be an issue of going forward. But if you look at the amount of green space you would gain if you were to close Washington Street, first of all, I think it's a wider roadway. I think there's more sidewalk space on there. And again, it would be connecting with the front lawn of the church, which I think would add to making it look like an old-fashioned green, even though it won't be. But thanks for that.
Thanks,
So
David.
I would be in favor of having this off-site mitigation take place.
Okay. Thank you, David. Nancy.
So one of my questions is this dollar amount tied to an absolute light?
Not necessarily, but in my professional opinion, the only way you're going to get the benefit of being able to process all those opposing lefts is with the light. I mean, there are certainly things that we can do that make modest improvements, but the really seed change is introducing an element that enables these conflicting left turns to get processed some other way.
So I've heard from 2 people that are in favor of a light, 2. Everybody else adamantly does not want a light. They have different opinions of how the South Walpole Common could be handled or should be handled, but 2 people want a light. I want to say 15 years ago, I went in front of the select board in Foxborough to talk about character, New England character, and preserving it, and not wanting a casino and asking their board of selectmen to support us, that it would ruin the character. South Walpole is already getting a development that is not consistent with the character, and instead of encouraging a development to be consistent with the character, we're talking about just changing the character of South Walpole. A light, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And you're talking about queuing. I mean, it's not going to help us during stadium events because, frankly, we're going to have to turn it off because we won't be able to empty out into the state because the state, we don't control their lights. They control the lights. They, quite frankly, decide to dump into South Walpole when they feel Route 1 is too busy and they fill up South Walpole. So that light is going to be meaningless. As far as Boyden School goes, every school in our town is gridlocked for about 20 minutes. When you're getting into school, 20 minutes when you're getting out, and the worst school is the high school. So Boyden School really isn't much different than any of the other schools. It stinks. It absolutely stinks. But that is true. The safety of the railroad, that is one thing that we, need to be very worried about. But who knows what the trips there are going to be like and how far in the future. I am for improvements on this site. I'm just not going to be for a light. And I think that if you have an entire South Walpole telling you that they don't want a light there, it's kind of irresponsible to back it, especially when we have other parts of town that have been begging us for lights, like begging this board for lights throughout the years. And we just had a bunch of developments downtown that have higher crash incidences. And we didn't give them lights, and we wanted lights. So, I mean, just to put a light in because they're giving us the money, I find it kind of not appropriate. And I am, like I said, I am for improvements in this area. Rotary. I know DPW and plowing, I know you don't love it, but they put a rotary right in front of the police station and fire station in Foxborough. They have a rotary in Norfolk Center. I mean, it can work. Do you love it? No. I mean, is it a little bit harder with pedestrian crossing? Yes. Is it the answer? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying a rotary is what we need there. But I am saying that there are other things to do that are more palatable to the people in South Walpole, to the people that are going to be there. I've been going through this intersection for 48 years. And it's South Walpole Common. And it is a mini common to our beautiful gem downtown. And we love that common, and people in South Walpole like it. So I can appreciate what David was saying about kind of moving the green space around. Jim, I'm so happy that you are concerned and mentioned that, this is a peer review. So you're going on limited data based on what they are providing. We all know that the traffic study wasn't done during peak times and during school. But I think that South Walpole deserves a lot more than, yes, you ended up with a 40B that is 6 stories and a nightmare for the fire department, total hazard for all those kids that were going to be worried about crossing a train tracks. And now we're actually going to throw a street light, a light right in the middle of it, and then change everything. I don't know. I find it insulting, and I'm all about taking monies put aside for mitigation of traffic at some point, but I am not for us agreeing to a light.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate all the sentiments that everyone's put forward here at the board tonight, and also in public comment of the ZBA, and also in the emails, and conversations that I've had over the past week. To Nancy's point about payment for these types of improvements, certainly that's not the end all be all, right? When I use my heart, I look at South Walpole Common, and it's beautiful and it's traditional. And I love it, and I would never want to do anything to remove it. And I hear 100% what the folks in South Walpole are saying, and I agree wholeheartedly with Jim O'Neill that we must do everything we can to preserve it. And I think that we will be able to through the comments that Mr. Reardon's made tonight. But one of the things around town, we look at like Short Street and Pauley in East Walpole, which hasn't got a light, and one of the reasons is because the payment of that and the hundreds of thousands of dollars it takes would never pass town meeting. We look at East Street and High Plain Street, one of the most dangerous intersections in the entire state for dozens of years, and it's only being improved, I believe, in the next year or so because of Pennington Crossing and the fact that they're going to chip in money so that we're able to pass it by a town meeting. So I think it's a great comment, Nancy, overall in the town and what we need to do to make these improvements and how much money it costs. And if people are really serious about this, then they need to be able to go to town meeting and say, these are issues that need to be resolved. And town meeting needs to be willing to put the money forward to do those so that we don't have to take advantage of these development situations, whether it's the Pennington Crossing or here with Omni, in order to make our town safer for pedestrians and for vehicles. And I know that was the case, right, with East Street and High Plain Street where it's a stop sign on a curve. So if the light that is proposed now, or it's not proposed, it's a conceptual plan, was a stop sign, we'd have it's almost the exact same configuration as East and High Plain, which records show, as I said, is one of the most dangerous intersections in the entire state of Massachusetts for accidents, right? We've heard Chief Carmichael say that before. So certainly, I can only say for myself, safety is foremost in my mind. And also foremost in my mind is preserving the green space and preserving the common to the extent that we can by making it safer. And so I definitely wholeheartedly support mitigation and involving the public, involving this board in all of those conversations. And thank you, Sean, again, for being with us tonight and everybody from the town. It's a big discussion, something that I definitely look forward to continuing as this process moves forward. So, being that as it is, I would entertain a motion if somebody would like to make.
Hey, Ben, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to request that the ZBA incorporate the offsite mitigation for the improvement to the South Walpole intersection into their decision.
Could I offer a friendly amendment?
Sure.
Something along the lines of incorporating the feedback from the select board that we've heard tonight, particularly around the general flow of traffic and ensuring proper flow, and the utilization of the common, and trying to preserve as much, not just as much space as possible, because back to my point, it's about being able to use it. So I just want to make sure that this gets those points, and as we go forward, that those things are factored in.
I'm happy with that.
Thank you.
And Jim, could I just clarify that that's upon the select board will have the final review of the whatever it gets laid out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, as road commissioners, anything that happens after the public comment, after all of this is done, if the ZBA decides to include these mitigation measures, at that point, yeah, it'll come before us, Jim. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. So was that a second, Jim?
Yes, second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Nancy?
No, and for the record, I am opposed to a light of any sort in South Walpole Common.
Okay. Mark?
Aye.
Jim O'Neill?
Aye.
And aye. Motion passes 4-1-0. And we will get that information over to the ZBA as soon as possible, Jim. So thank you again, everyone from the town, the chiefs, Sean, for being involved in this. Look forward to further discussions with all of you on this topic over the next year or so.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Sean.
All right. Moving on to the last item number 4 on the revised agenda. Under new business, we have a discussion and vote on the fire department safer grant application. Chief Bailey is here with us tonight to discuss this. As the board knows, this safer grant is something we've discussed every year around this time. So, Chief, if you could please give us a rundown of what you're looking for here and what you propose.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will keep this brief as we have spoken about this in the past. So the SAFER grant is the grant from the federal government for staffing. The federal government will cover the costs for the first 3 years of the grant, and then at the end of the 3 years, we would pick up the costs associated with those personnel. What I would propose is that, and what I'm asking for the board tonight, we have a tight time frame for this. We have to have it in by March 12th. That's why I couldn't wait for the next meeting. So what I'm asking is if the board is inclined to let me move forward with this, that I would work closely with Jim to come up with a number that Jim would think he could sustain at the end of the 3-year period moving forward to add additional personnel to our department. I have been before your board and other boards many times asking for staffing. This is an opportunity that we have. It is highly competitive. There's no guarantee that we would get it. There's only about 300 awards that are given. The awards would start to be given on May 24th and go up until September. If we were fortunate enough to get one, it would be for a 3-year period. So I can answer any questions that you may have, but that's the short version of the SAFER grant.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. Jim Johnson, if you could weigh in on this as well, please, and any information that you have for the board.
Sure. I'm always one to take free money if the federal government's dishing it out. And so I think 3 years, and I'm actually, I think I mentioned to you, Ben, that last year was a little different, Chief. I think it was 25% the town had to come up with initially because they changed things around. So this year it's even better. They're paying for everything up front for the first 3 years. My biggest concern is I want to be responsible about the way we do it. And I wouldn't want to say, yeah, let's go for 12 firefighters right off the bat, just to add extra people to each group. I want to make sure that in 3 years from now, I can build slowly, $100,000 or $200,000 a year into the firefighter budget, fire department budget, because by the time all is said and done, when you factor in health insurance right now, it's roughly about $100,000 every time you bring on a firefighter or a police officer. And that's what we got to build into the budget. So if I'm able to build up, if we're able to do 8, build in 800,000 over the next 3 years to that budget, I think we can do it. And I think we can do it because we have some of these projects that are coming online. We'll continue to get the new growth if the economy continues to bounce back. And I think we can do it. And the reason I'm saying 8, and we need to keep it, the groups balanced out with the Chief's 4 groups. Currently, they're at 10 per group, right, Chief? Am I right on that one? That's correct.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so if we could add, 4 firefighters, on each shift or whatever, so it would take it up to essentially 12 on all the groups. So that would help and go a long way. And as you may recall, this year, I am factoring in the lieutenant position won't count towards the manning part of the new day position, but there is an extra firefighter position in there that I was more or less leaving in there as a floater. If we have someone leaves for another town or a retirement, something that's unexpected, we won't be short all of a sudden. So I think if we're able to use that position, which I already have, I think 50 or 60,000 built into the budget, it allows us to get a head start on getting to that 8. And we can just leave it in the budget and until we know whether, Chief, when will we know if we get this grant?
The time for they anticipate starting to awards end of May, and all of them will be completed by September. So within that time frame, if we're going to get it, we would know within those 3 months.
Good. So with the extra position, the floater position I have in the budget, I think I had that starting in. I feel like it was like October 1st or December 31st. So we have some flexibility in there. So I think 8 would probably be the magic number we'd go for. I know the chief and the deputy would probably want more, but responsibly, 8 is the number I think would work.
Okay, thank you, Jim. So we'll go around to the board now for additional questions or comments. David, if we could start with you, please.
Sorry. Yeah, I think we have certainly been looking to expand the ranks there, and certainly giving ourselves a 3-year free ride will certainly be helpful in doing that. And I appreciate Mr. Johnson's comments that he wants to make it sustainable. This is certainly it's something that I just would suggest that we keep reminding the finance committee and the town meeting that this is coming, so that we don't have a problem in that 4th year. And that we stop putting money aside for it, so that first year maybe is not as big of a chunk all at once. But I appreciate that, and I appreciate the chief's continued attention to making sure that our firefighters are safe. I think at this point, I think with the manning that it is now, I think they're in a dangerous situation where they don't have enough guys. You know, when there's not enough guys on a truck, that when someone's manning the truck, that there's not enough people protecting the guys that are in the building. And I think this is important.
Yeah. Thanks, David. Nancy.
So to build on what David was saying, it was about a year ago, because it was right before COVID, that we had this whole discussion. Remember, Mark, I see you nodding your head. And we were specifically talking about that we realized that all this building and all the development, and you guys were starting to maybe do some training inside of the new, oh my God, I almost called it a hotel.
On the truck.
Yeah, on the truck. And I thought we sent a good, clear message. I mean, I know a lot has happened this year, but that this is the direction that we wanted us to be going in. So to be confused because so much has happened, I could understand why. But regardless, our population, the change of the type of housing that is available in Walpole is here. And, the size of the department is not appropriate for safe care of a fire, I guess, or, of keeping, your department safe and keeping the site safe and rescuing the people. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a no-brainer. And, thank God, Jim keeps making that money in the basement, but let's take some from the federal government if we can. And, thank you. And I'll make the motion when you guys are ready.
Thanks, Nancy. Mark.
Yeah, I agree with what David and Nancy have both said. We've recognized that the department was not staffed at the level we've wanted, especially over the last 5 years. And now, especially with all these apartments coming online and the potential big development in South Walpole, I think this is a great opportunity to move ahead and add 2 more firefighters to each group, which I think will make a huge difference. I don't think that solves all our problems with the fire department, but it sure is a good step in the right direction. And, over the last few years, we've been doing onesies and twosies, which is good if that's all we can do. But I think this will give us a real opportunity to step it up. So I'm behind you 100%, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Jim.
Yeah, Chief, without being repetitious here, congratulations on identifying the grant. I know we've been talking about it for a little while. I also know that everything that you're trying to do here is tied very directly into strategic plan. So I appreciate that and see that. Yeah, the town's going through a huge growth spurt right now, and the types of fires we got to fight are getting harder and harder. And, people are getting older, so there's more medical runs, the hospital's gone, all that stuff. So you got a lot of challenges ahead of you. This is really brilliant thinking, and I applaud you for it and very much support it. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion for the chief to apply for a SAFER grant with approval for up to 8 additional personnel, subject to his coordination with Jim Johnson to ensure sound budgetary planning once the grant runs out.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, proceed to a roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben? Aye. The motion passes 5-0-0. Thank you, Chief. Deputy Chief Barry, thank you for being with us this evening. Appreciate all your work in this regard, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thanks.
Do you want me to make a motion for consent agenda?
Please, in the minutes when we get there. Thanks, Nancy.
I'll make a motion to accept the following gifts with gratitude. A donation from Hub Grinding to the Council on Aging, a grab and go account, and a donation from Mr. and Mrs. Nasson to the Council on Aging gift account.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there's no further discussion, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben? Aye. The motion passes 5-0-0.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of February 9th, 2021 as presented in our packet.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed to the roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ben? Aye. The motion passes 5-0-0. And we will move on to the town administrator's update. Jim Johnson. You're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. I don't usually do that.
You're better at Zoom by now.
I know. COVID update. At this time, there are 1,633 total confirmed positive cases in Walpole. Of that, 1,562 have completed monitoring. So we have 71 active cases. That is down from last 2 weeks ago, which it was in the mid-90s 2 weeks ago. To give you some perspective on this, Patrick reminded me that our first department head discussion regarding COVID took place on February 28th last year. The Board of Health Director, the town nurse, and both chiefs took part of that. I went back and looked at some of our updates over the last year. My first update to the Select Board took place on March 3rd. At the time, I let the board know that we were keeping a watchful eye on this, working on the response plans if necessary. It's amazing how much has changed in just 1 year. And at the time, I had no idea a year ago what the coronavirus is or COVID-19. So it's kind of scary how much more we know, hindsight being 2020. Vaccine update. The COA vaccine clinic started a few weeks ago, but unfortunately, they've been stopped due to the governor's decision to focus on mass vaccination sites. Representative Rogers did set up a meeting with Rob McLaughlin, who previously worked for Senator Tinley. Right now he serves as the legislative director for Secretary Slutters earlier this morning. Rob explained that the mass vac sites, it's more sustainable. They're receiving 400 to 500,000 requests for doses from local governments, and that the mass vac sites were just more efficient in distributing it in places like Gillette and Fenway Park. Local officials, myself, Melissa, the chairman, Bill from Board of Health was on there, both Patrick, Trish Fisher, and we just explained to them our frustration. And Trish really made a great point that we had multiple volunteers and officials trained. We went out and bought a couple of refrigeration units to store everything, and it was just taken away from us. They understand. They're hearing this from town managers and administrators from around the state. The meeting was well attended. Our entire delegation was there, and the senators, the representatives. We got the point across, but I also understand that the vac sites are more efficient. At the end, we did ask, could you reconsider this if we get moving along? He didn't leave us hanging out there. He said, we'll try, but no promises. So, the COA and the Board of Health did a great job getting those sites up, and I know they did help hundreds of residents in Walpole and our first responders. So that's where we stand with that. Norwood Hospital, some area managers and I met with Sal Perla, who's the president of the Norwood Hospital last week. He explained that they have no set ETA for the hospital to open. They were hopeful that the insurance claim would be resolved by May or June. That's actually what's tying this whole thing up, is the insurance company and the hospital are having some tough times negotiating, where the claim ends and where it doesn't end. So I did ask the question, is the hospital just being considered to be shuttered altogether? And he said, not at this time. As more information becomes available, I'll share it with the board and the public. Sal did agree to attend the managers' meetings. We have a Norfolk County area managers group that meets once or twice a month. He said he'd come in once a month, so I'll keep you guys updated as things evolve with that one. Finance Committee, they continue to meet. We've almost made our way through all of the town budgets. Public safety and insurance are being considered on Thursday night. Schools are up next week for the whole week. And then citizens petitions are on after that. Borrowing update. This is really, really good news. The bond results came in for a about a $4.5 million borrowing earlier today. This is mostly for the borrowing for the Fields project, street improvements, and some emergency generators that Don was buying. The interest rate came in at 1.062%, so almost 1% even, which is great since we were budgeting 4.25% last year at this time. I estimate we saved about $1.3 million on the 15-year borrowing. So at your next meeting, the select board will be asked to vote to approve the results of the bond sale and sign the necessary bond documents and legal paperwork. This is huge. This was Jody's first borrowing on her own without Marilyn. Lisa stepped up to the plate. She did an excellent job, and I'm really, really proud of them and impressed with the work that they did on this, working with Hilltop Securities, and they did a great job, and this is some good results. I wish we could have had this for some of the buildings or some of the other projects in the past. So, timing's everything. And that's it for me.
It's hard to follow up when you hit a grand slam on your first at bat. So I don't know. Yeah. But no, great work by the finance team. I know that we've said that before, and every time they're in, we have all the I's dotted, T's crossed. So it is good news, Jim. Thank you for that. Any other comment from the board?
I'll go.
Nancy.
I just want to say you guys have just all done an amazing job. Jim, everybody, your whole team, so impressive. Whether it's handling COVID, whether it's borrowing, I mean, and Jim, just you, like all that you have accomplished, all that you've financially planned for, all the buildings that you've done, the team that you've put in place, again, there's so much sadness out there and it's been so overwhelming, but when we look at what we've done in this town, what you've done in this town, this past year we could have, turtled up and just tried to hide, but you've kept things going, and hopefully we're going to be a stronger town because of it. And we're just really lucky to have all of you and everybody at Town Hall that just kept doing their job and kept plugging along. And it's very impressive because there's many places that didn't do this well. Trish, I'm so sorry. You did so much work to get the vaccine area going, and it was running smoothly. Early on, we were on a Zoom and we were asking the governor to kind of step up more, but yet we use local control. And now all of a sudden we're trying to own the local control and they just take those vaccines right away. It really stinks because, no one's supposed to be near anybody, but let's all go to the same place and get the vaccines. That's my soapbox. But in the end, I'm so proud of our town. We've just done a good job. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Any other comment from the board? Questions?
I'll just echo, Nancy's comments and just add, under the most incredible and unforeseen circumstances. So really well done. Thanks for saying that, Nancy. That's really well said.
We have a lot of good people working here in town, and I'm not just saying it because you're my bosses, but you've been a great board the last year. You've let us do our thing and make sure that people are safe. So I'm appreciative of that. The finance committee, town meeting, for working with us. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. Being that there is no further business on our agenda and no further comment from the board, I'd hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Being that there is no further discussion, we'll proceed to the roll call vote. David.
Aye.
Nancy.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
And Ben, aye. The motion passes 5-0. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe and have a good night.
Thanks
Good
all.
night, everybody.
Bye, everyone.